So this is day two of our interview slash chief presentation. So really fortunate to have Chief Cascana with us today. I thought I'd try something a little bit different this semester, Chief. We had our panel last week. It's a smaller class than normal, so we had I think 29 in the class. So what I did is I brought all the chiefs in at once, and we just had smaller breakout rooms. And I thought I'd bring in you in particular, but a fire chief to do a one-on-one. And I thought you would be the first one to try this because of your background. First, I was giving the students, your background that, from what I know of it, different volunteer and career fire chief experience, as well as the instructor for this course prior to my arrival. So I said, you know what, this is probably, the perfect person to try this format where you can have a one-on-one with the students and kind of give without any time. Well, there is a time limit, but just, you know what I mean? There's no real format, just kind of a question answer. This is what I've seen in the volunteer world. This is what I've seen in the career world. I've sat on the interview panels. I've been interviewed. I've been the instructor for this course. I've seen assignments like the ones the students have just turned into me. We just finished we've done the About Me presentation and the first three assignments, the cover letter, the job application, and the resume. So Chief Cascana is all familiar with what's required in the real world compared to what the instructor sees at this level, at this point of the course. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to bring someone in who has various amounts of real life experience as well as experience with this course. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to introduce today Chief Cascanet. So the floor is yours, Chief.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the introduction. Just FYI, they're doing some work in the station here, so you might hear some drilling or whatnot going on. They're running some cable for some antennas, so I apologize in advance for any noise behind me. We'll try and keep it to a minimum, but if you do have any difficulties understanding or hearing me, just raise your hand and I'll pause for a bit, okay? Chris, again, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, any opportunity to get in front of the students, and I call it pay it forward. Try and, give you guys some advice on how to get into the career and what to do, what steps to take. I do appreciate that. I look forward to it as a means to pay it forward. I had some great mentors helping me when I was younger trying to get into the service, so I do appreciate that. One thing that I'm not sure if Chris, sorry, just how long has the course been going? This day two? Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, we're in week 7.
Oh, week 7. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's a lot of course material done for day 2, but day 2 of the interviews with the chiefs, I take it.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry for not clarifying that. Yeah.
No, all good, all good. So I'm not sure what format you want me to use, Chris. I've got some, I'm going to say, pointers right from, the job posting, the application, the cover letter, the resumes, and to the interview process. So I'm not sure exactly what you guys are looking for, but I do want to keep this very interactive. The last thing I want is to, for you guys to sit here and listen to me ramble on. So in week 7, you've probably heard quite a bit of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. So please, I'll touch on a topic. I'll give you a few comments, but if you have any questions about application, process, interviews, resumes, cover letters, by all means, please don't be afraid to ask, and I do encourage the participation. So I guess, Chris, I'm not sure what you've talked about my background, but I'll give you a little bit of my background just so you guys can understand where I'm coming from. So I started my career back in 1990 with Woodstock Fire, actually. I was fortunate enough to get on at a pretty young age, and I think I worked there for about 20 years. I worked myself up to deputy through the ranks, and I was kind of at a crossroads. So my chief at the time was roughly 2 or 3 years older than me, and I had to say, okay, do I want to sit here as deputy for the next 17, 20 years, or stretch my legs and go get some different experience? So long story short, I went to Richmond Hill. I was fortunate getting a job out there. I was the deputy chief of operations, communications, training for Richmond Hill, which from a Woodstock perspective, a lot larger. It was like 185,000 people, 5 going, and we actually put a 6th station in there. So it gave me some expanded experience. Did a lot of hiring for Woodstock, did a lot of hiring for Richmond Hill. We were doing a growth spurt. We opened a 6th station. So again, when you open a 6th station, it's a minimum of 20, 24 people, just depending on how you do that. So after that, I went to Oshawa as the fire chief of Oshawa for what I call a cup of coffee. And then I was fortunate enough to get back the chief of Brantford. So I worked my way back west to Brantford. That's where I'm originally from, the Woodstock area. That's where my family was. So worked myself back to the Brantford area, and then I retired in Brantford in 2020. I actually taught this course just prior to Chris for a year or two, or a semester or two, prior to jumping back into what I call my second career as the fire chief for the town of Tillsonburg. So fire chief wise, I'm going to say most of my career was on the union side and management side. So I was union president for a long time, union secretary, and then I went to the management, or the dark side as they called it. Went for management, been in management for about 20 years with, like I say, 5 different departments. So I got a lot of perspective. And that's what I say it gives me. It gives me a lot of perspective is what it does. A lot of understanding and perspective about the fire service, about recruitment in Oshawa, recruitment in Richmond Hill, recruitment in Woodstock, even in recruitment in Brantford. We hired a number in Brantford, and as well as Tillsonburg. So very different. So from a volunteer to a career side of things, many of you may start your career in the volunteer service and work your way over. That's the way we tend to get experience. Some people just want to do that for their career. They're happy doing what it is, and volunteering on the side, so to speak, is just the way they give back to the community. And it is a fantastic way to give back to the community, as well as gain experience and everything else. Chris, I'm going to ask you to monitor the chat if that's all right. Oh, okay. That was your.
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
So I can blab away and you guys can chat. So on a personal note though, folks, there, I just want to shut that. Personal note, I have 2 boys that are in the fire service. One's in the city of Toronto and the other one's in the city of Cambridge. So unlike them, I hope you will heed my advice, because they never seem to listen to their dad for some reason. But anyway, they were successful. But a lot of the life lessons and a lot of the information I'm going to pass along is the same stuff I told them. It was the exact same stuff I told them. Here's what they need to do to improve their chances of success. It is a fantastic job. I'll tell you right now, the fire service has been so good to me, so good to my family. I encourage you all to pursue it with the utmost passion that you have. It's not easy to break into. You will be rejected. But I encourage you to stay strong, be resilient. I liken it to a hockey team. If you're not successful at one fire department, perhaps, they're looking for a defenseman and you're a forward. Don't take it personal. Just learn from the experience. If you're offered the opportunity to ask feedback, by all means, please ask for feedback on how you can improve not only your resume, but your interview skills. the one thing I didn't mention, but and I don't know if Chris has talked about this, but this course, some of you probably, this is a waste of time course, but this course, believe it or not, is probably the most important course you will take in your career at Conestoga. And the reason I say that is people spend a ton of money getting all the certs, going through all the courses, taking all the suppression, and they fail on what I call the critical skills. So the application, the interview, the resume. And if you can't master them, everything else you've done up until this point, quite frankly, is for naught, because you've spent a ton of money up to this point, getting all the education and all the certifications and whatnot you need to succeed in the fire service, but really you can't pass the interview stage. And it's, I don't know how many people, Chief, you guys did the panel interviews?
Yeah, we had 8 fire chiefs last week.
Yeah, so they're pretty challenging, especially when you stack up a group of 4 or 5 chiefs. You walk in, it's pretty intimidating. There's HR, there's a couple of chiefs. It's hard to master that process. Even myself, when I go through interviews and stuff like that, there's usually anywhere from 5 to 8 people, and they're all firing questions at you. So it's hard to think on your feet. It's hard to get used to that process. And the only way you do that, quite frankly, is from practice, practice, and practice. So my advice to you from the panel interview process is, one, everybody can go online, Google probably the top 15 questions they're going to ask you, but it's about writing out each question and figuring out what that question means to you and how you would answer it, and then really polishing it. So write it out, practice it. What I recommend is every day in front of the mirror, just take out one question and practice, practice, practice. You can do it in Zoom and video yourself, so you catch your isms, your ums, your ahs, your pauses, stuff like that. But it's definitely, if you haven't mastered that skill, it's a skill you're going to need to master before you hit the table. And the time to learn it, quite frankly, is not when you've got the opportunity. The first time you hit a panel interview isn't the first time you should have replied to most of those questions. So I get off on a little bit of segue, but we're going to start just with application process or postings. And so from a job posting perspective, I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights or things that I like to look for. So now at your level, you guys are in the 3rd semester of the program, or 2nd semester of the program, however that works. 3rd, Chris? Yeah, 3rd. Yes. I see a lot of people nodding.
Yeah.
So you guys are getting to the point. Some of you may have just come out of high school into college. Some of you, this is your second career or second kick at the schooling. So what I would highly recommend you do, depending on your situation from a posting perspective, is start to collect all the postings that are out there. So I think Kawartha Lakes, I think there's a number of postings out there. I'm just trying, sorry, I'm a little bit out of touch with them, but as the postings come up, I recommend you guys grab them, download them, and then read through them. And the reason I encourage you to do this is, one, you'll start to see trends. You'll see what certain skills and qualifications that each department's looking for. And then really what I would expect you to do out of that is to take all of those skills. Sorry, it looks like I got a halo here. Take all of those, what I call, there's minimum qualification, then there's preferred skills. And then you need to build a plan. I'd say to some people it's a 5-year plan, maybe it's a 3-year plan, just depending on what skills you need to acquire. But build a plan that leads you to complete all of the preferred qualifications. I can tell you right now, if you show up to the table with the minimum qualifications, you will not be successful. It's mainly the preferred qualifications they're looking for. So if you see they're looking for the public educator, go get that course. If you see they're looking for EMR versus first responder, go get that course. If you see the trend where they're looking for some type of resiliency training, go get that course. If you see and you'll see they kind of float across. One will grab onto it, then another one will grab onto it. But the only way you really do that is just start trending, watching the trends and what they're looking for, and slowly in your personal development plan, check off each one of those courses they go. You'll see some are looking for training officer now. Take that course. You know, if they're looking for fire inspector 1, that's a, you know, a lot of places are looking for that. I think you guys get that here, do they, Chris?
Not fire inspector 1, they do life safety educator.
Okay, so even if it's an additional course, I would highly recommend you take that as well. So from a 3 lines of defense, that's kind of the way we look at it from a fire service perspective. So there's public education, there's code enforcement and prevention, and then there's emergency response. And I would encourage you guys not only to take those courses, but learn how to incorporate all 3 lines of defense into some of your responses on the interview process as well. So it's not just about being a firefighter, it's about being an inspector. You know, when you notice an issue while you're out in the field as a firefighter, you have an obligation to deal with that. It's not a fire prevention issue as it used to be, you know, oh, that's a fire prevention, I'm not worried about it. Same with an education. Education or public education, stuff like that. Try and build those skills. It takes some time to build those skills, learning to speak in front of the public, learning to speak even in front of kids. But I highly encourage you to build out all 3 lines of defense in your portfolio as well. So when you're writing your cover letter, try and touch on the 3 lines of defense, and important, how it really relates to the fire service. The other things with postings, try to look at what they're trying to ask for when it comes to relatable experience or skills, and try and align your cover letter and your resume to those skills. And what do I mean by that? So for instance, you know, you work at an Arby's right now, but I guarantee you, working in an Arby's, you follow instruction, you inspect equipment, you maintain equipment, you operate equipment. So try and align what you do now in your current role with the requirements of a firefighter. Try and tie it back. So think about what a firefighter does in a day. They, you know, they obviously respond to emergencies, and you may or may not be able to do that just based on your position. But again, try and develop related skills or related work experience related to firefighting, so that you can try to align your resume better with what they're looking for. Chief, did you guys talk about matrixing candidates out from a interview process perspective? So how I, as a chief, or a lot of people as a chief, figure out who moves on to the next round?
Well, we've talked about what could potentially get you to the B pile, not necessarily what's going to make you stand out on to get to the A pile, other than, you know, qualifications. But if there's something further to that, then by all means.
Yeah. So, is it possible to share my screen, Chief?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, give me 1 sec here. It's not giving me the option. Usually there's something at the top that.
Yeah, it could be on. Is it on the bottom ribbon?
It is now. Got it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to share with you guys, and sorry I can't see, but you guys tell me if you can see my screen.
Yep, good to go.
So this is what I just created this real quickly. This is what a matrix looked like. And a lot of departments are starting to use this what I call candidate matrix, to matrix candidates out to see who moves on. Some of the actual HR programs out there use this type of filter to really see who moves on. And again, you guys know that the fire services recruitment process is highly scrutinized. So as chiefs, we try to do standardize the processes so that we can't be challenged or less likely to be challenged on certain hiring. So what you're seeing here is basically just a quick matrix that I did up. So we put the candidates, usually number, it's not even named, so we wouldn't even know if you're male, female, or whatever. There's usually a name in there. And just so you guys are aware, a lot of software nowadays will do this for us. So when you guys apply to a firefighter job, there's filtering questions, I call them. So, are you eligible to work in Canada? Yes or no? And the minute you put no, I don't even see your resume. Do you have grade 12? Yes or no? You put no, I don't even see your resume. So they're kind of like built-in filters, and you guys have to understand that we see thousands of these things. So keep that in mind when you're writing your resume. You want to try and I hate to say it, tick as many ticks in the tick box as possible. So for example here, what we would do, and I did a similar one in Richmond Hill once when we were looking for, we had a bunch of candidates. I think it was for we hired 20 or 24 and literally spent 3 weeks interviewing. Just come in 3 weeks, 40-hour day, just interviewing people and candidates. It was a long process, and candidates start to blur and blend into each other, and it's hard to stand out just because there's just so many people you're looking for. And some places have a ratio, so an interview ratio. So some will do 6-to-1, some will do 10-to-1. So for every position, they have to interview at least 6 candidates. For every position, they have to interview at least 10 candidates. So you can see how this grows when you're hiring 24. I mean, could you imagine 240 interviews? But some places actually have these ratios that are required in order to get a proper candidate pool. So this matrix basically is the candidate's name down here, and it says, do you have a degree? Yes or no? And you would basically just get an X in there. Again, it's usually not your number or name, it's more of a number. Do you have a degree? Yes or no? Is it related to firefighting? Yes or no? Do you have a diploma? Yes or no? Is it related to firefighting? Yes or no? Are you a current firefighter? And is that a career volunteer? So as you kind of work through this matrix, you'll see the more ticks in the tick box you get. I'm just going to slide it down here. You'll see near the end the total score, and that's really how we start to determine who's going to move on to that, to use Chris's terminology, the A pile, so to speak. So the more ticks you get in the tick box, the more opportunity or chance you'll be successful. So when you're filling out these applications online, just be mindful that not to filter yourself out. So if they're looking for something, try some way without obviously lying. You don't want to lie or cheat, but try to make sure that you can fill as many of those ticks in the tick box as possible from a career matrixing perspective. So if you're a paramedic, that gets you some. If you have some prevention background, education background, and again, I just did this quickly for demonstration purposes. Second language, people forget this all the time. It might not even be a language that's what I would call like in your community, but say you come from an Italian or a Polish background or whatever, and you don't even think to mention that. Well, language is huge. Diversity is a huge skill nowadays, so I would definitely put that in there. And you'll see a lot of places will ask for that too, whether it's French or but some people leave their home or native language off thinking, well, it's not really what they're looking for here, but don't. Any questions about that? I'm just going to get rid of this so I can see everybody here.
That's great, Chief. The one thing that we talk about is how to, especially with this course. So at the end of this course, everybody's going to come out of this program with a diploma. And then this course is offered throughout Ontario. So there's going to be that times however many programs there are out there. So you're basically competing with the same resume. And we do talk about your experiences, like you use the Arby's example. Like when I discuss it, I use the Tim Hortons example. So everybody's going to have their own story. Is there anything that you've seen in your experience, and maybe you'll touch on it when we talk about the resumes, but from your experience of going through the, the hundreds of applications, of what, is there something that has consistently stood out to you, both good and bad, that it has stood out because it's been that glaring, either good or bad, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I used to like the candidates, quite frankly, that had the EMS background. So they would have their fire suppression, but they'd have their EMS, but they'd also have their fire protection. So believe it or not, one candidate I interviewed, actually, I didn't hire him, got snapped up by somebody else, but had their fire protection technology diploma, had their paramedic diploma, and also had, the same NFPA qualifications as you folks. So you guys will see over time that it's the more you do to better your resume, the better. I mean, we could literally ask for doctors and get it. It's almost that highly sought after anymore. So I guess my advice to you is, again, especially if you're just coming out of this program and you're kind of new to the market, don't get discouraged. Everybody hears no. Just, I hate to say it, build the plan and fly the plan. It's an old aviation adage, but it is build the plan for yourself to be successful. Even if it's a checklist you keep beside the side of your bed that you say, hey, I want, this, tick it off, this, tick it off. It really comes down to you as a package. I never looked at just one person's education. I looked at their experience, right? To me, it's like that well-rounded candidate. That's what we wanted. We want somebody who obviously has the minimum qualifications, ideally the preferred qualifications, somebody who's really, I'm going to say, active in their community. So they have a lot of volunteering experience, they have a lot of work experience, related experience. And I'm just trying to look through here to see if there's some younger folks in the crowd here, but it's hard to tell. Don't get discouraged, and it's not an age discrimination thing if you're not successful when you're just out of this program. It really is a factor of you don't have the life experience a lot of other people do. So you come across as maybe not so prepared or less experienced. And that's really what it is. It's not a discriminatory thing. It's just a matter of saying, hey, you know what, there's other people who are older who have had more life experiences. So when they're talking about their life experiences at, say, the interview stage, it's not, well, when I played hockey, I did this. Not to say hockey's not a great, scenario to use when you're answering certain questions, but you'll actually have more depth to your answers, I guess is what I'm saying. So again, I'll be absolutely honest with you. When my boy said, hey, I want to be a firefighter, I said, go get a degree first. That's exactly what I told them. Did they? No. So I'm not saying you have to have it, but again, when you matrix people out, if you have the degree, you've got that, plus you've got, the courses you have, or you have a college diploma, or you have an MCA, plus you have what you have. So you just, it's about building that plan and developing that plan over time. And really it's in some ways it's more like a battle of attrition. It's like, who wants it more? So, what are you going to do to compete with everybody else in the class to get the job? It's that competitive, and I wish it wasn't, but it is. And it's a fantastic career. There's lots of time off. There's lots of, good pay, good benefits. You get to play with some cool tools and drive some cool vehicles, and it's a respected career amongst the community, but there's always some downside to it too. There's a lot of cancer. There's a lot of PTSD. There's a lot of mental health problems in the service. So again, it is a good career. So I do encourage you to pursue it, and pursue it wholeheartedly. And I've even told people, hey, take a less paying job than your current one, just so you get related experience. I know, I'm not sure if they still do it, Chris, but the body removal service used to, look for Conestoga kids to help out, and they would do that, a volunteer department, EMS on the side, whatever, like patient transfer, stuff like that. Fire protection, go work for a fire protection technology company. It may be less, but at least it's in that related field. So when you're talking about the experiences you have, it's more relatable to the fire service. There's lots of like hazmat companies. There's a lots of like Toyota does their security, their fire protection inspectors, stuff like that. So try and as best possible relate your experiences and your education to a relatable field. We
Chief,
talked about, go ahead, Chris.
sorry, just gonna jump in here. I do have a question from one of the students, Keely, or Keela. I'll turn it over to you in a second. Just on the post-secondary education, and it's something that we've talked about in the About Me presentation, that there's lots of things that come up, lots of different education backgrounds and work experience. And this is something that I found just talking to my management in Stratford about what they look for, and what goes through their mind when, they get overqualified people. So like you mentioned, we could hire doctors, and doctors have actually applied to Stratford. I'm not sure if they're practicing, but however, they have some pretty impressive credentials. What do you see as a fire chief, both in the volunteer world and in your career background, when you see a degree or when you see an unrelated post-secondary education? Like, we really have a lot of talent in this classroom, both academic and work experience, that it really blew me away how qualified people are. But it's so diverse. Like, it's not firefighting. It's like, what do you say? How would you say that to the students, as far as it does mean something, because this is how I want you to sell it? Like, what would you recommend to the students as far as making them unique with their backgrounds?
That's a great question, Chris. I guess here's the way I'd frame this is, regardless of what you have it, and that's what makes you different. So if you have a degree in kinesiology, you tend to see a lot of those, a degree in kinesiology, by all means, trumpet it. That's something we'll never take away from you. You'll always have that. And I can tell you, you'll probably fit right in from the EMS side of things just because of that background. Do you need a degree? I'd say no, but it helps. So if you remember back to that matrix, when we're matrixing candidates out, to your point, Chris, you would get a tick in the tick box for having a university degree. It may not be related, but I think all education in some way is relatable. It says that you can move up, you can educate yourself. So I'm not saying it's required, but I'm saying it does help. And I tend to look at, I guess the way I would look at it is, Shane has a degree, Shane doesn't have a degree, but we have the same qualifications. Who steps up, right? So that's kind of the way I look at it on a balance of probabilities, is chances are you would score higher just because you have that than somebody who doesn't, put it that way. Does that kind of answer the question, Chris?
Yeah, on the other side, if you don't have one. When I was applying, I got hired when I was 26, and I was 3 years into it. So I came out of the factory setting, and I did a lot of part-time certifications from, Dart Rescue with Brad Kuderman, and pretty much anything that I could possibly get my hands on. And I went with the mindset of more is more. Basically, I try to flood it with related qualifications. This is in 1998, so there wasn't pre-service back then. If someone is not in, like, we have some mature students that, like you said earlier, it could be their second chance at a career. So they may not have the opportunity to go back to school again for after pre-service. Is the push still EMS? Like, would you recommend going paramedic, MCA certification? I know there's lots of things. We actually have a lot of guest speakers coming up the second half of the semester with Toyota Aaron Dolson from the victim, the body removal, and we do have a hazmat presentation too. So interesting that you brought that up. But what would you recommend to the students that potentially aren't in the space to get that, whether it's a degree or a diploma, or even going to another 2-year program at the college level? Like, what would you say? Would you point them in another direction?
Again, another great question. Well, here's what I'd say is all education is good. The fact that you have a degree, well, you'd have to, if you don't have the degree, I would say you'd have to balance that out with work related experience or experience just, and you'll see that. And I can tell you we've hired a lot of people without degrees, but when you're in the interview phase, they come across as they have a lot of life experience, right? So there's a balance. And again, when I talked about that whole or well-rounded candidate, that's really what we're looking for. I typically, again, and here's, I probably should preface everything I've said to now is this is just me. You go to a different department and every department's different. Every department, what they like, what they don't like, what their experiences are different. I mean, I've been through pretty much all. We hired a bunch of academics. Well, it gets you so far. Then you go, okay, we want more with, worker bees. So we're going to hire worker bees. I look at the fire services, we're trying to build teams, right? So a team of 4 or 5 folks that when Mrs. Smith has her problem, they go out and they can solve her problem. So, if it's an electrical problem, maybe there's an electrician on board. If it's a medical problem, maybe there's an EMS on board. Or if it's a building construction issue, maybe there's a tradesperson on board. Or somebody has some experience in the volunteer world. So I would just say, look for that. Don't discredit a lot of the volunteer services out there. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to get experience, particularly those who, maybe don't have the opportunity to get a degree. I didn't get my degree until later on in life. I call it a degree in a decade. That's what I got. It took me 10 years to get it. But eventually I got it. And so it's just a matter of how much you really want to invest in moving forward. It is an investment. So you'll have like a lot of folks, they'll go out and get a university degree, and I don't know what they're costing now, 30, 40,000, but you'll also have people who sit in the circuit. I call it the circuit. That's where you're doing your OFAI, and that's $800 every month or every year. And then it's another 600 for this every year. And I call it the circuit, but there's, you're out there trying and trying and trying, but it costs money, right? It costs money to maintain your York, maintain your OFAI, maintain your, Red Cross, your certifications. It maintains it. You almost need a job to keep applying. That's how competitive it is. So again, from an education perspective, I would say the more the better. So in my matrix, when you looked at it, if you had a university degree and related, it would still, if you had a related college diploma, it would still kind of balance out in the matrix. And again, I'll be honest with you, some programs, there's a 2-week, you can take this course 2 weeks in Texas. You study for a month online and then you do 2 weeks in Texas, and that's your NFPA. Well, you know what? I give that 2 weeks credit is what I do. Like, that's really what it is. So I even weight them. So I weight this program higher than that. And then I think there's still one it's a 3-year program in Sarnia. So I'd weight that heavier than this program, to be absolutely honest with you. So that's just the way I look at it. Again, others just look at it, hey, they got their cert. That's what it is. I don't look at it that way. And I've noticed from the training perspective, when you get some of the, I'm going to call them faster processes, they obviously haven't had as much time on task as other people, put it that way. I'm going to open up for questions now because that might be controversial.
Well, I'm just going to make one thought on the education. So from what I'm taking from your answers, and I'm just kind of spitballing some of my thoughts too. If I was a student and I didn't have anything other than Conestoga or pre-service, and I picked up a couple things here and there. If I had to think about it, and what I like to do to the students is I recommend that I really want them to do a self-reflection of what they've experienced, both work and personal, and that's gonna make them unique. So you polish up your unique qualities and then you deliver your product. So what I'm kind of guessing, and you can correct me if I'm on the wrong track, but if you were self-reflecting and you thought about, okay, so I don't have a degree, but I'm competing with somebody that does, what would they offer that fire department that I wouldn't with a degree? So, in some of the About Me presentations, I've mentioned that when I see a degree or anything that's post-secondary unrelated, I say, okay, this person knows how to